or tactical team.
Hey there guys, this is me, Malorian, and this will be another Orc Tactical Team. And today I want to be tackling something that I see as more of a community issue. And what this issue is the problem of girls. Now, the reason why girls are a problem, this isn't like a little boys club where I'm hiding up in my tree house and no girls allowed up here. This is more the idea that whenever we're going into any sort of tabletop war game, whether it is 40K, fantasy, now Warmachine or Guild Ball, you do not see a lot of females. And I mean, given the fact that the population is pretty much 50-50, why are we not seeing that? I mean, that really is a problem. If you're looking at communities and trying to build communities and make sure they're as strong as possible, if half the population is for some reason not taking part, that's a big deal. Now, of course, there are exceptions, right? Kind of more in the, celebrity status of Warmachine. We're seeing people like Wargamer Girl. We're seeing people like Zosha. We're seeing people like Lost Aspect Podcast. But they're almost more so the exceptions that prove the rule. I'm sure, too, in everyone's community, in my community, in your community, there are women that play, right? There's, of course, like, Susan comes out, almost every single week or something like that, right? But again, that's kind of like the exception that proves a rule, when really it should be 50-50. The fact that you're getting like one person out of 30 in your meta, that's really showing that there's something going on. So what is the issue? So what I like to do here is cover kind of like the main things that I normally hear and kind of give my thoughts on them, and then kind of propose something that I think it is. And again, maybe you'll disagree with me, maybe you'll agree, we could talk about it down below, but let's just get right into it. Now, I think the very first one that people will throw out there was like, well, why don't you see any girls in Warmachine, is that Warmachine and tabletop wargaming just isn't a girly thing to do. I mean, come on. I mean, those girls are going to be doing more things, like they're going to be out there trying to do baking things and their nails and shopping. Oh, okay, I can stop there because I think we all know that's just excessively sexist and stupid, right? This is something where, sure, if we're watching like a TV show or a movie Stereotype, we'd be expecting to see these things, but to be honest, in the real world, it holds no sway in Western life. I teach my daughter how to play Guild Ball, and she didn't just burst into flames. This is something that they can do. It's not something that they're banned from or anything like that. Warmachine at its core and tabletop wargaming is not designed to be for males or for females or against females. It's really for anyone. So again, I bring up this topic just so we can basically cross it off and say how stupid it is, but there it is. So let's go on to the second one, and that's really the idea that, well, girls aren't good at wargaming. They're not competitive, they don't have that killer instinct, they're not going to really get in there and try and crush people, and then in turn, when they go in there and play, they're going to lose, they're going to get depressed over the game, and they're just going to quit because they don't want to just be crushed at this game when girls just aren't competitive anyway. Again, this is much in theme of our last point, where it's just stupidly sexist and doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We've seen in all sorts of sports, all sorts of other ones, right? Whether we're talking about, hockey or football or, any sort of Olympics or anything like that, females are very competitive, right? And the whole idea that, they're just going to be there as tender little flowers who don't want to go for the kill, that is bullshit. As a man who has been punched in the throat by his wife, yeah, killers, women have that killer instinct, and to suggest anything else is pretty foolish. So again, the whole idea that girls are not competitive people and girls cannot excel at Warmachine is just silly. If anything, just like any male that might be getting into a new hobby, as they get into it, they have to learn. And of course, they're going to start off at a lower skill set. They might be crushed by other people, and they might lose interest. However, what's going to keep them in there is going to be a support group. And I mean, if that support's not there, they're going to leave. Doesn't matter if they're a boy or a girl. I mean, that whole process would be the same regardless. So again, that whole point, a reason why I include it is just to cross it off and say how stupid it is. So let's move on to the third point, which is kind of on the other spectrum. Now, if Warmachine isn't, if Warmachine's not a boys only type of thing, and girls are actually good at Warmachine and stuff like that, well, another thing that people bring up is like, well, when women go to play at the store, it's a really weirding out experience where you go there and the boys are all staring at you, and they're just like looking at your boobs, and they're like, look, she has boobies, and like trying to ask you out and stuff like that, ask you if you have a boyfriend. You know what? This is just the same stupid comment, but from the other side, right? If we're saying on one side, hey, I'm a feminist, and the idea that Warmachine isn't girly and that girls aren't competitive is just outright false and sexist, and we shouldn't be using it as a valid point whatsoever. Well, on the other side, if we're trying to say that boys are always trying to be, being awkward and going around girls and staring at them, that's the same stupid stereotype that we shouldn't be applying. Now, I'm sure if we go and we say, okay, all men, go out there and Google a gamer girl, and I'm sure, like, if you look at those pictures, one of the first things you're going to be looking at is probably their boobs. It's just the way that us men are. However, we are also mature people. Okay, let's also just say that there's a spectrum, and sure, I'm sure there's younger people that are not mature yet that are going to be kind of weird, but you're going to see this no matter what. All tournaments, all communities are a spectrum. There's always that one black sheep, but otherwise, most people are normal. And I mean, where I'm coming from with this is that when I go and I've played against several different female at different events over the years, again, not being the 50-50% that I would expect it to be, although I've played against my fair share, it's been a thing like, oh, hello, okay, hi Sarah. It doesn't matter if your name was Sarah or Sam. Thank you for the list. Okay, what's the scenario? This is what I have, and we play our game. There's no like me, like Malorian, like he. No, that's just not how society works. It's a stupid stereotype. And so if we have to reject that female version of the stereotype, we also have to reject that male side of the stereotype. So now we're at a tough spot, because a lot of the times when people have these conversations that talk about why there's not more females in the community playing these tabletop war games, they usually go and push towards one of those two type of camps, right? Or both, saying that, there's this and there's that and that's why it doesn't work. But I mean, if we're saying all those things don't apply, why don't we see any women at the Warmachine? Or at least why don't we see the 50%? And what I believe, and again, we could be going and we can counter this down below, is I believe the whole problem is not so much that those stereotypes are real, but the problem is that women believe those stereotypes are true. I believe that the reason why women are going to tournaments and more convention is probably other women. Now, what I mean by this is I believe that when someone is going to be looking into going to Warmachine, they might be like my brother. Now, the way that my brother is when he first got into wargaming, he was really worried that other people were going to find out. What if they know I'm a nerd? And so even though, like, hey, we're just all, people playing this game, he would hide his stuff. He would not join any Facebook groups that were public. If people went over to his home, he would hide them away. But I mean, really, once he got into it and started playing more games, he realized, oh, I know that guy from school. Oh, I know you too. And as these things start coming out, and you start realizing that there's nothing to hide, right? This is just another hobby that people play. Well, then all of a sudden he wasn't so hidden with it, right? He wasn't so reserved with it. Now, at the same time, though, I believe that women must go through the same thinking. They must go into it and think, well, if I go into this, it's such a weird thing for girls to be into this. What will happen if I go into this? People are going to think I'm weird. My friends are going to think I'm weird. My friends, my gang of girls, they're going to ostracize me. They're going to push me out. And I guess I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this Warmachine thing, because even though it looks interesting, I don't want them to change the way that they think about me, so I'm not going to do this. And one of the reasons that I have to kind of reinforce this is the same thing when I tried to get my wife into it. When I tried to convince her, like, look, it would be amazing if we both played 40K or Fantasy or Warmachine. We got to go to tournaments together. We got to go to conventions together. It would be amazing to do it. Like, this is a vacation for us where we get to go away and play games. And one of the main reasons that she brought up is like, well, I don't want my friends knowing or thinking about me doing Warmachine, right? What would they think if they heard that I was going off and playing these games? And so, maybe that's really just pulling out like one side example, but I think it kind of like just reinforces the idea that I've seen over and over again with different people that for whatever reason, the stigma is out there that this game is a nerdy game, right? That people play in basements, and that it's really just these greasy guys in a basement, and, they don't have girlfriends, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if I go to an event, and I look around, it's almost the same thing. I think a really good comparison for this is the idea that if you go to a tournament, these guys are all going to be win-at-all-cost players, it's going to be no fun, and everyone's trying to be cutthroat. Well, that's completely false, as we've talked about before. Well, sure, maybe like the upper echelons or certain individuals are like this, but we're still all people, right? The same people you go to work with, or that you go to softball with, or anything like that, to bowling with, these are the same people that play this. It's just another hobby out of numerous hobbies people have that they partake in. If I go to a tournament and I look across, there'll be a few new faces, there'll be a few young people and stuff, but by and large, they're all mature adults who have significant others, if not also children. The number of parents, we've actually talked about, we should actually run an event where there's a babysitter, because such a large portion of the people playing this game actually have their own kids. It might actually be viable to run a tournament that actually has like its own daycare. These are mature people. These aren't the people that are there snickering at girls. But the problem is just that stereotype that's out there and the stigma that's against it, and I believe that's what's holding the girls away and the females away. So what can we actually do to counter this? Well, I don't know if we really even can. This is really a cultural thing, a Western cultural thing that we need to fight. What I believe we need to do then is to embrace every single example out there that is contradictory to this. That's why I make sure I latched on to Lost Aspect. Now, I love that type of podcast anyway. It's one of those ones where, just like Crippled System, where they don't talk about Warmachine all the time, they kind of break in other topics, and I liked it anyway. But you can be sure that that's one of those podcasts that I push just to prove to all the people that, look, there are other women who are playing this tournament. Whenever I'm trying to point out some different channels, I'll be pointing out things like, did you see the Wargamer girl? And I might even do it purposely just to show that there's women playing in this. It's a hard thing where you don't want to go to creepy, like, oh, let's look at all the girls. But at the same time, it's one of those things where the only way that you can change the way that the community views itself, and really outsiders view the community, is to showcase those things that counter those stereotypes. So that's what I would do. I would warmly encourage things like that. If you ever do see that one weird person that is kind of pushing a female gamer away, deal with it, right? Just like you would be dealing with any other weird person that might be stealing models or cheating or, whatever antisocial thing it is. Deal with it, because this is a real problem. Like I said at the very beginning, if this is something that did not exist in our community would be almost double the size, right? Just like we said, Warmachine can be for girls, just like it can be for boys. And if right now we're not seeing that 50-50, that just means that there's all these players that probably are interested in playing Warmachine, but they're not coming into it because they don't see it as a viable option. And if we made it a viable option, just imagine if every tournament we went to was double the size, everything just gets better for everyone. So there you go, guys. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Post it down below what you think is the issue, or if there even is an issue. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.